so much for this honor to be here, to be speaking with you amongst all of you experts. So aside from Kathy's limitations, as you see, I'm standing on a stool, I also have my own set of limitations. So very often people can't really truly identify my age, and that's also assuming that I'm some kind of college dropout or college student who just came to crash your party. Well, I actually credit my youth to an occupation that forces me to be physically active, a spiritual and wellness routine that keeps me mentally sane, and a food regimen that keeps all the bugs at bay. So just one question, are there any professional chefs out here? Raise your hand, please. Yeah, I thought so. That's why you have me here. That's because my belief is that food, health, and sustainability are all holistically intertwined. My wellness journey began as a chef. Where's the clicker? This is clicker, right? My wellness journey began the day I truly understood what suffering was. Like many of you in the audience, I'm certain that you've shared at one point or another in time similar feelings and experiences as I've had. I suffered from rejection, shame, and neglect as a child, and it led to eating disorders, drug use, and clinical depression. And with that, it eventually triggered my survival skills. From surviving through yoga, meditation, Jungian psychology, practicing Buddhist philosophies, and even a visit to Dharamshala, I learned to understand what it meant to be truly happy. Like many of you here who shares the same life path as I do, when one is content at their subconscious state, they realize that there is much more in life than the self. And from that was when I realized my life goal was to make others happy. To be of service to others through food made me happy. So Grassroots is a small family-run business that I founded in 2012, and we began Grassroots Pantry as a little 16-seater cafe and a workshop space in a tiny cul-de-sac unknown to even the most experienced of taxi drivers. The idea was to use our cafe format to serve food that was sourced and prepared ethically and nutritiously, and to raise awareness of the truths behind our food system. It was a place where we would build a community of like-minded sustainability practitioners from various backgrounds. We moved to a much larger space 3 years later to suit Hong Kong's increasing demand for plant-based food and good, clean vegetarian food. Through the years, we launched Prune, our retail grab-and-go brand, our catering company, The Alternative Caterer, and as Kathy mentioned, a pop-up initiative called the Collectives Table, and consulted for a CrossFit gym on functional, nutritional, dense food. And most recently, we converted our 108 auspicious number Hollywood Roots space to Nectar, where we challenge plant-based dining at a progressive level. In the coming year or two, we're conducting plans to roll out Pollen Lab and Academy, where responsible food sourcing and systems training are scaled. And we will further extend our consultancy and franchising on a global level. All of the businesses that falls under the Grassroots initiatives, or as I'd like to call them, projects, all have one thing in common. They are mission-led and are designed to create measurable impact. Today, several of our projects have been recognized for their impact globally, from the Sustainable Restaurants Association in London to the World Economics Forum. Our published sustainability report was also singled out by the United Nations SDG camp as a best practice case study for restaurant operations, where unknowingly, as a business operation, our everyday practices had already been ticking the boxes of 14 out of the 17 SDG goals. But of all of our humble recognitions, I was most thrilled about my nomination at this year's Basque Culinary Prize Award, which celebrates the impact of gastronomy when chefs use their creativity, knowledge, leadership, and entrepreneurialism to generate change in society. So let's turn back time and figure out how all of this got started. A few years ago, I developed an aching curiosity to find out What effects our actions and decisions at Grassroots have on our community? And just keep in mind that these are operational practices that are not often adopted or even required in restaurants and hotels. We knew that we were encouraging people to purchase more consciously by sourcing local and organic through traceable farms. However, how much carbon footprint are we actually minimizing by sourcing as locally and organically as possible? We had already been segregating our waste and ensuring that our waste collectors provided the transparency and data for where our recyclables were to be processed. But what quantities of carbon dioxide are we avoiding? And in layman terms, what does that even mean? We knew we were diverting approximately 2.6 tons of food waste per month through our sponsored food waste digester machine called Orca. But what quantities of greenhouse gases are we avoiding and mitigating altogether? And very importantly, how do we address the issue of food portioning? And that consumers' general mindsets is that the value of food is based on size versus nutrients. Despite all of the sustainable actions practiced in our restaurant, as you can see, I still had a lot of questions. How were we going to measure our impact, and how do we encourage others outside of our establishments to see that these efforts are effective and economically sustainable? So a visit to one of my dear friend Cherry Atilano's model farm in the Philippines opened up my eyes to what was possible. What she had been working on in Marinduque was to document and systemize their organic farming practices, some which her and her team developed, some inspired, and some adopted over the years. By systemizing this knowledge, she would then be able to scale. And now she's bringing this type of model into Siargao, and then to another island, and to another island. So I thought, if there was simply a way to measure what we were doing and a way to define the impact in numbers, we can then accelerate the change through knowledge sharing of a proven system by converting actions into tangible, measurable data. I set out to do my research on restaurant consultancies that focus on food, waste, water, and electricity consumption. I talked to waste management experts, academics, and reviewed studies of organizational behavior. But there still wasn't a single system in place catered to consult for the food and beverage business sector, which was already extremely difficult to manage and to operate to begin with. There were pockets of consultancy efforts being done, but often for corporates, where the evaluation was outsourced and often hard to ensure that companies meet LEED standards. But never before did restaurants alone put the time, thought, and the money into measuring its environmental impact, and for the sole purpose of benchmarking what it means to be a sustainably run restaurant. By happenstance, I was invited to speak on a panel at the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival in March of 2018 with Chef Anthony Meint, who eventually won the Basque Culinary Awards this year, and his partner Chris Yang in the middle, who together opened the Klein Mission Chinese Foods in New York and Perennial in San Francisco. He was at the festival presenting his newly launched initiative, Zero Foodprint, which, in his own words, initially emerged from a simple question. Is dining out terrible for the environment? The answer came in the form of a study published in the now defunct Lucky Peach magazine, in which they compared the carbon emissions of 3 meals: a dinner at Prime Meats in Brooklyn, a tasting menu at Noma, and a home-cooked meal. And what they discovered was that restaurant meals and home-cooked meals were surprisingly close in terms of carbon emissions, with the bulk, about 70% of it, coming from ingredient sourcing. Deliveries, energy, waste, and laundry were relatively small. However, what they found most encouraging was how easy it would be for restaurants to reduce or even eliminate their carbon emissions directly. So Anthony and I got in touch immediately, and we set out to sign on as their 11th audited restaurant and the only vegetarian-vegan restaurant in their list, as well as the first in Asia. And in Asia, it's a completely different system. So a couple months later, after what we felt was a serious grilling of backtracking of information. Their partner 3 Degrees, which is a energy and climate company, took the information and translated the traceability and food cycle of each item on our inventory, which is about 300, into greenhouse gas emissions terms. We learned that organic sourcing for major cash crops, such as rice, produces 19% less greenhouse gases than the conventionally grown ones. Whereby the decision to purchase organic fair trade chocolate beans from our neighbors in Vietnam and Bali, where they're the closest countries for where cacao is prized, we're providing income for small farmers and supporting the livelihoods, as well as their work, which actually indirectly helps mitigate greenhouse gas emissions through the planting of staple trees. We also learned to break down the energy consumption of unconventional ingredients that are not often used in commercial kitchens, such as kelp noodles and chia seeds, moringa, almonds, which when compared to processed tinned tomato paste and cow's milk, sourcing whole ingredients are much less intensive. So the data collected, along with the numbers received from Orca and Hong Kong Recycles, revealed to us that as a restaurant that practices responsible sourcing, eliminates meat and dairy on our menus, minimizes and diverts food waste, recycles and limits general waste, every single diner who dines at Grassroots Pantry actually contributes 65% less greenhouse gas emissions than compared to any other on the list. And some of these restaurants are renowned for their farm-to-table philosophies. So the one main factor that really differentiated us was that these restaurants serve meat, and we didn't. Now, why am I sharing this with you when most of you in the audience already know that by adopting a plant-based, anti-inflammatory diet, it's the most direct way to reduce greenhouse gases and to reverse global warming? Because most chefs aren't told this very fact. And even if they are, they don't know what to do about it. So that's why I endeavor to change that. The same aching curiosity that I had 16 months ago before this realization led me to my next mission, to normalize sustainable restaurant operations. So after this research, I took home 2 key points. One was that all restaurants should review, and restaurant hotels, should review their menu design to reflect low-carbon, holistically sustainable plant-based dishes, and to reduce dishes derived from livestock animals, as well as its byproducts. And the second is that every single chef, restaurant owner, F&B director, stakeholders are held accountable for the waste we produce and the energy that we consume. And when we turn that accountability into actions, we become solutionists for our industry. So this solutionist type thinking is not new, though. As restaurant operators and hospitality professionals, we're fundamentally trained to solve problems quickly and with a smile, always. What do you do when a 4-top has waited 15 minutes for its main, 3 of them is ready for pickup, but then the last dish is burnt? What happens when it's 10 minutes before dinner service and the male bathroom has flooded? Our education system teaches us to be neurotically efficient and to put out fires when shit hits a fan. For anybody who's ever worked in restaurants before and lasted a year, you'll know that we're a special breed of crazies. Chefs particularly so. The militaristic and hierarchical culture bred by chefs of previous generations have allowed the conformity of misconducts, such as gender discrimination, sexual harassment, alcoholism, and excessive drug use. But things have been changing in the last 10 years, especially. That's because there's a new breed of chefs, like myself, who aren't afraid to call things out when they're not right. And these are the types of chefs who care equally about the industry's archaic system as well as the state of our planet. So everyone will know this gentleman, Chef Rene Redzepi, very famous for him challenging the old world order of gastronomy and celebrate it. a once ignored and undefined cuisine with his eponymous restaurant, Noma. Moreover, he launched MAD as a 2-day symposium in 2011, when 300 chefs, restaurateurs, servers, and writers gathered in Copenhagen to discuss the future of food. By 2018, that community grew twofold, and I was lucky to be amongst one of those who were invited who envisions a healthier, more sustainable, and more delicious world for cooks and eaters alike. Chef Jose Andres, the affable Spanish chef, credited for introducing both classic and forward-thinking interpretations of Spanish tapas in US. He launched the World Central Kitchen in 2010, a nonprofit aimed at feeding those affected by natural disasters. When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico 2 years ago, the World Central Kitchen jumped in, provided nearly 4 million meals to those in need. And now Chef Andres has been honored by Time magazine as one of the world's most influential people. And last year, the chef was named Humanitarian of the Year by the James Beard Foundation. The Honorable Alice Waters, my role model, is chef restaurateur of Chez Panisse, which opened in 1917. She's a leading proponent of the slow food movement. The Edible Schoolyard is what she is most known for, and it's originally established in 1995. And it began as a garden being planted in a middle school. From the Edible Schoolyard grew Waters' new cause, that of persuading the government to increase funding to improve school lunch programs. So her dedication to provide school children with more healthful eating options earned Waters a fair share of naysayers, who argued that seasonal food was a dispensable luxury for underfunded schools. But she remains true to her philosophy, and naturally my philosophy as well. If we do it right, the money will come in. These icons I have mentioned are not only chefs, but activist solutionists. They spotted the problem, whether it be cultural, societal, or environmental, and they used their powerful voices to create change. The other day at Susie's opening speech, she mentioned that the wellness industry has been shouldering responsibility for people's health for the longest time. How preposterous is that when 70% of global deaths caused by NCDs each year is related to poor diet? And the food and restaurant industry has not only done nothing to, or very little, to contribute to solving this epidemic, but has also added fuel to the fire. Naveen the other day reminded us again what Hippocrates quoted: "Let food be thy medicine." Our food industry has been unwell for the longest time, since the post-World War II. It has been unwell from the inside out and outside in. And until we can educate and empower within from the ground level up, we cannot heal others as we should, as food is meant to heal. Restaurants need to serve more than just food. They need to create visions that goes beyond cooking good food and winning Michelin stars. We have a civil responsibility to do more, to feed people nutritious food, and to broaden people's ideas of what wellness cuisine actually entails. So as CEOs and entrepreneurs, the one thing you can do is to give your staff the tools and resources to be able to do sustainable food service with authenticity and accountability. Without the tools and knowledge, collective healing cannot begin. The future of food is integrative. Bring back the TCM and the Ayurvedic knowledge into the conscience of our youth. Serve a menu that is biodiverse, nutrient-dense, plant-based, and which applies zero-waste ethos. So I'll just quickly finish. I think I have 10 seconds, right? That went by so fast. Just quickly, running through our menu at Nectar, I wanted to show you how we actually incorporate different techniques and ethos. So on the left is raw tuna temaki. It's a 16-hour process of how do we get the kind of chemical compounds in tomatoes that actually mimics the flavor of blood as well, that has the same flavor of blood. So it's a 16-hour raw dehydration process. And on the bottom is a cauliflower jicama rice. And so by proposing more raw foods, we're actually giving our diners living foods. And it tastes just like a spicy tuna hand roll. In the middle is where we source biodiverse. So it's a banana flower or a banana blossom if no one's actually used it. Now a lot of plant-based food tech companies are actually using it to mimic the kind of texture of fish. And then on the right is a dessert where we've incorporated superfoods, ancient techniques, kefir fermentation, kefir syrup, and a banana cake that uses zero-waste bananas. So very often, farmers will have surplus of food on their farms because they don't get sold. So we work directly with our farmers, and that's why when they have surplus of something, they'll let us know. And this is something that they've created. They've completely dried bananas with their skins on and then grounded them into flour. And so we use that flour to create our banana cake, which tastes so much more moist and delicious. And the ice cream, the green little ice cream there, is a moringa ice cream. Over here on the left is a shimeji bisque soup. So this is one of our dishes that's highlighted on our 12-course edible solutions menu. Each course highlights one way to mitigate or reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So the shimeji mushroom bisque is utilizing a plant-based technique as well as a traditional technique of really drawing all of the moisture out of the shimeji mushrooms. And if people have not actually used shimeji mushrooms, when you slow roast them, it smells just like prawn or lobster. So we use that as a base to create a lobster bisque or a shimeji mushroom bisque. And very importantly, this dish actually highlights the use of plastic and single-use plastic. And because it's really destroying all of our wildlife in the ocean. And very funny is that now we have technology that can utilize crustacean shells and turn that into packaging as well. All of our food are completely low glycemic and gluten-free and such. And this is just this type of, sorry, I get so excited talking about food. Yeah, so there you go. And come visit us.